Now before we start this, I'm going to tell you I'm not a psychologist, not a psychiatrist. I'm not here to talk about why veterans do what they do, say what they do. But, you know, veterans are a strange breed. And now that I've told you what I'm not, let me tell you what I am. You know, one time, a long time ago, long time ago, I was a door gunner in Vietnam. Got shot down, received a Purple Heart, Heroism Medal, all of the good stuff. But I also been married 4 times. And I've also been through drug alcohol counseling twice. So, you know, when you're working with someone and they look at you and say, oh, you don't understand. I'm like, yeah, really? What don't I understand? You know, I've been alone with my demons a lot. And just like a lot of combat veterans, they fight it alone. And there's no need to fight alone. That's my story. That's my ending as we begin, is that we're not alone. We stand together. I'm going to show you 4 slides. And these slides aren't to glorify war or do anything, but I want you to look at the faces of the veterans, and I'm going to refer back to these slides a lot. PTSD is an anxiety disorder. I want you to remember that phrase. PTSD is an anxiety disorder that a person may develop after experiencing or witnessing an extreme, overwhelming traumatic event during which they felt intense fear, helplessness, or horror. That whole paragraph is summed up in one thing. It's an anxiety disorder. It's not something that's wrong with you. It's something that happened to you. A traumatic event is one that is intensely stressful, during which a person suffers serious harm or death, or witnesses an event during which another person is killed or seriously injured or threatened. War is not the only thing that causes PTSD. There's a lot of different things that I'm going to show you. And you don't have to be the main purpose in it. You don't have to get your butt kicked. You don't have to be in a grocery store and be robbed or be beaten with a gun. You just have to witness it. You have to feel that your life is being threatened. Some examples that could trigger PTSD: a serious threat to your life. Friends, it was said, I was a door gunner in Vietnam, and it was said that the life expectancy of that door gunner when he was on the ground in a firefight was 19 seconds. I'm not sure that was the case, because I was on the ground a lot of times for more than 19 seconds, but that's just an old cliche they talk about door gunners. Seeing another person who has recently been or is being seriously injured or killed. We did many medevacs. We did body bags. We did a lot of things to put us in that category as well. Harmful or fatal accidents. This could be a car accident. This could be just about any type of accident there is. Some examples of what could trigger PTSD: a natural disaster. Thank God I've never been in one of those. Floods or tornadoes, etc. And terrorism. True heroes run to the fight, not away from the fight. The firemen and the police officers and the first responders ran to that fight. Assault, domestic violence, or battery. I'm very lucky. I've never been in any of those situations, and I apologize to anybody here that's ever been in a violent situation where they felt threatened, where they were attacked. It's a situation that I can't tell you that I understand because I've never been there. Now the next one is rape. My friend Bob Carnegie is in the room with us today, and many years ago when we put the first presentation together, the person that did the video and Bob and my wife said, Jim, don't use rape. And I said, why? And they said, rape is too traumatic. I'm like, what do you mean, too traumatic? It's just too traumatic. It's something that some people can relate to and other people can't. But people will be turned off if you use that because it is so emotional and traumatic. And so I took, Bob being a very good friend of mine, and obviously my wife, I took everything they said and I sat and I thought, okay, I don't know about rape, but I know about war. And I know about combat and life and things like that. So I personally decided to keep it simply because if it has that much knockdown power, I want to relate it to war. Now war, combat, life and death decisions. I want to tell you about a friend named Jerry Clapp. And Jerry Clapp was from Paducah, Kentucky. And I was invited, he died in his 40s, and his family asked me to come down and speak at his funeral, and so I did, and I stood in front of everyone and I told them what a great guy he was. I told him, I said, Jerry had this love of country. It was just a burning desire to heal, but nobody knew how he died. They didn't know. They couldn't tell. Nobody, there was no reason for him to die. I'm going to tell you a story about life and death decisions. Jerry and I flew together in An Khê, Pleiku in the Central Highlands of Vietnam. And one day Jerry had to go into a hellhole to do a medevac. Now a hellhole, is anybody helicopter guys here? All right. A hellhole is when it runs on the ground, the foliage is so high and the trees are so tall that the helicopter can't get down. So what they do is they cut trees, several trees, as many trees as necessary to get down, cut them down and get them out of the way so the helicopter can go down into the hellhole. Now, as it goes down, sometimes it can't go straight down. Sometimes it has to go down and there'll be a branch sticking out and the crew chief will say, stop, tail rotor clear right, and then we have to turn the ship and go back down, turn the ship and go back down. Well, Jerry was flying with a man named Warren Lively, and Warren Lively was on the right side, Jerry was on the left side, and they made it down, and then as they started back up, they started receiving fire from a hillside off to the side. Now, I want to remind you that Jerry is down here, and the hills, they're receiving fire from here, so he can't return fire, because if he did, he'd shoot the rotor blades off. So that's why it's called a hellhole. So they're just there, and they're going up very slowly, tail rotor clear left, tail rotor clear right, as they're receiving fire. So they get up to where they think they might be able to get out, and Jerry's calling for Warren Lively. Warren, Lively. No answer. He goes over, and Warren Lively had taken a round from the top, entered here, and came out the back. And the only medical training I had, or we had as crew chiefs, were compresses. So Jerry takes out the compress, puts it on his neck, puts it on his backside right here, and he's holding him, and Lively grabs his arm. Now I know this because Jerry Clapp was one of my very best friends, and as he cried, he told me this story. And as it got up enough, then Jerry could return fire. He heard the pilot say, clap, clap, receiving fire at 9 o'clock, which means straight dead out from the ship. Life and death decisions. At that very second, Lively's got his hands on, Jerry's got his hands on Lively trying to save his life. The pilot says, receiving fire at 11 o'clock. At that very second, he had to make a decision. Do I let go of Lively, return fire, because he dies? Do I stay with Lively and not return fire, and maybe we all die? I can tell you he left Lively to die. He returned fire. And when I stood before those people in Paducah, Kentucky, I said, I don't know what he died from, but I know when he died. He died that day when he let go of Warren Lively. Some examples that could trigger PTSD. We've been through these. A serious threat to your life, seeing another person being injured, combat, rape, assaults. I showed you terrorism, and I didn't stay on terrorism as long as I wanted to. And sometimes I stay on it too long because I am in such honor, such awe of those people that ran to the fight, not away from it. It was just amazing how much courage that would take. You saw the smoke and the bellows, and you saw the Twin Towers coming down, and yet you saw them going to them to try to help. Definition of acute, chronic, and delayed. Acute, early onset, very intense, but resolved within six months. So, that's pretty easy to understand. I'm in a firefight, and I do something, and all of a sudden somebody dies, and it affects me intensely for about 6 months, but then it starts to reside, starts to go away. Early onset, but prolongs longer than 6 months. This one and delayed pretty much run hand in hand as far as I'm concerned. It lasts longer than 6 months. Now, this says it can last for months and sometimes years. I'm going to tell you a story about my brother Bill. My brother Bill's 2 years older than I am. He's as big a patriot as I am. He had open heart surgery in 1966, could not join the military. He called me one day and he said, Jim, he said, have you seen Saving Private Ryan? And I was single at the time. I said, no, I really haven't, Bill. And he goes, look, I know what you do. I know what you do. He goes, you need to see this movie. I'm like, okay, hung up. I don't know, 3 or 4 months later, he called me again. He said, did you see it? I said, no, I haven't. I'm not avoiding it. He asked me, he said, are you avoiding this movie? I said, no. And I said, I just haven't had time to go see it. So finally, he sent me a special edition DVD tape, or CD, or whatever they're called. So I put it in one Saturday morning. I watched about the first 30 minutes, 40 minutes of it, shut it off, and I said, oh my God. Jeez, oh Pete, I hope this is Hollywood. I hope to God that wasn't true. So I went and found people. I found 2 people. One of them had numbers on her arm, old guy. Then I went to the VFWs and American Legions, and I said, is this true? And some guy, an old friend from the VFW, I believe it was in Hobart where I lived at the time, said, that's right, Chancellor, let me tell you something. The gates went down, the first 4 or 5 rolls were killed. People were jumping off the side with 45, 50-pound packs on their back, drowning. I'm like, jeez, oh, please. That's hard to believe. Yeah, he said they would hold their friends up as shields and try to get to the beach. Can you imagine that? I'm like, no, hell no, I can't imagine that. Spikes in PTSD claims when this movie came out jumped for people 80 years old or 70 years old or whatever it was. PTSD, the demons of the dark can stay with you forever. Depression, isolation, and guilt. These are 3 of the big dogs that I personally, humbly think that drive this PTSD demon. I mean, you get depressed because you think nobody understands. You think you're all by yourself. You think you're the only one that's ever experienced this. You start to isolate, and then you feel guilty. This is what I got. Welcome home, Jim. December 14th, 1970. I didn't want anything else. I mean, that was fine. But what happened after this is what I want to tell you. You know, I took off the uniform and I sat down with my parents, and my grandma was there, and everybody's crying, Jim's home, yay, Jim's home, yeah. And I love that. You know, I'm a family guy. So then we get done with all of that, and I go to a tavern that I grew up in. Walked in the door, and it was the same thing. Hey, Chancellor's back. He's going to play shortstop for us. Man, he was a hell of a bowler. And I'm like, wait a minute. Let me tell you where I've been. Please, let me tell you what I've done. Please. Their life hasn't changed. They want to play softball, they want to bowl, they want to belly up to the bar. That's where they were, and this is where I was. Looking for somebody to talk to. Looking for somebody who might say, hey, I understand. Yeah, I've been there. So they were ready for me just to shut that door. I'm a combat veteran. I got blood all over me on one side of that door. I opened it and I shut it, and now I'm back home playing shortstop. It doesn't work like that. I'm not even suggesting that all combat veterans are affected by PTSD. I believe the vast majority of veterans are back into the mainstream of society, leading healthy and happy and fruitful lives. But believe me, I know firsthand that everybody's not. Don't judge me. You don't know me. I talk about Bobby, I've talked about him a couple times. Him and Doyle and myself were in the Veterans Treatment Court in Lake County. And we help a lot of veterans who struggle, whether it be drugs or alcohol or misdemeanors of any type. And Joe Quasi tries to hook everybody up. He's a Vietnam veteran, so I'm going to hook him up with a Vietnam veteran. He's this, he's about that age, so. But when they put a young guy, the first time I was there, they put a young guy with me. And his name was Bradley. Big, tall guy, cats all over him, badass. Sat down and started talking to him, and all I had to do was close my eyes and listen to his story. It was no different than mine, or Randy's, or anybody else's. There's a bond. We share the love of country. Doesn't matter when or where you serve. There's a connection to it. Symptoms of PTSD: depression, isolation, survival guilt, anxiety disorders, reactions, intrusive thoughts, flashbacks, night terrors. Depression and isolation, I think as this goes along and as we've already traveled through, you'll see where these two fit in. Survival's guilt. We're going to talk about why did I live? Why is it that I survived and Jerry Clapp didn't? I went to the wall in Washington with my friend John Garcia and several other people, Larry Bayshore. I looked up 11 people. I'm in a blue flight. There's 30 people in the flight. 11 people had funerals that year. 11 out of 30. And so I'm etching names, and we're taking names, and then I go down and I sit down at the end of the wall. And John comes up to me and he said, "Jim, you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think so, John." He said, "You sure?" And I said, "I don't understand, John. I don't want to be on the wall. I don't want to be hurt any more than what I was hurt when we got crashed, when we got shot down. I just don't understand why I'm not on that wall. Why I'm not on that wall." Survival's guilt. Anxiety, reaction, and I'll call it disorder. Man, I could just go all day about me on anxieties. I got red flags up all the time. I'm alert to everything. I live in a little farmhouse in Lowell. When it snows, I go and look out every window to see if there's footprints around my house. See if anybody's been walking around my house. I go to the mall, and as I'm walking down the hall with my wife, and people are walking towards me, naturally I get between them. I think that's a guy thing. I'll give you that. That's a guy thing. But then I take it a couple steps farther. I look and see if I can see a gun. I look and see where his right hand is. I look and see who he's looking at. If he's looking at me or if he's looking at my wife. And then as he walks by, I listen for his steps. And I tell myself as he's walking toward me, "You don't have to do that, Jim." But I do, somehow, some way. Something in here makes me do that. Intrusive thoughts, flashbacks, and night terrors. If Regina, my wife, was here, she would tell you that I toss and I turn and I fight with people 2 or 3 times a week. I don't know anything about that because I'm asleep. But I can tell you about intrusive thoughts. Intrusive thoughts are things that are reoccurring thoughts to you that are intrusive in manner that you wish you could change the outcome to. So it never happens. The outcome never changes. But you get a barrage with it over and over again. And mine was, we were moving some friendlies, people that were American sympathizers, and we were moving 30 or 40 of them from one place to another. Not supposed to be any VC there at all. Supposed to be very safe. We were on the side of a hill, like this. And a helicopter has to put its nose down and take off, so we couldn't land on that hill, like this, because we couldn't take off. So we put it like this so we could take off. First time they get on there, it's 5 or 6 of them, they get on the helicopter, I got my headphones on, I'm listening to music, clear up left, clear up right, we go. I don't know, second, third time maybe, we get there, start receiving fire. Supposed to be no VC in the area. Start receiving fire. And when you start receiving fire, close range fire, it's the most exciting thing I've ever done. Never have I felt the juice that I have when I was in combat. I'm not glorifying anything, I'm just telling you straight up. Me against you, you against me, close range. So I start working out with my 60, and I'm telling Steve, let's go, let's go, let's go. And the helicopter, everybody knows that is on that ground. If they don't get on that helicopter, they're dead. Because the VC are going to kill them, because they know they're American sympathizers. So I'm working out with my 60, and everybody's trying to jump on my ship. And Steve said, too heavy, Jim, we're too heavy. So we're sagging down. I grab the guy and I throw him off as I'm working out with my 60. And the man tries to jump back on. And as I'm working out, he jumps back on. I kicked him right in the collarbone. Kicked him in the collarbone, he landed on my skid, ran right under my 60, and in an attempt to get on the other side, he runs right into the tail. Instantly dead. Intrusive thoughts. Why did I let him back on? Maybe he should have ducked and got on, and maybe he lived. I know he didn't live. I know he didn't. And that ride with those 5 or 6, maybe 7 or 8, I don't know, screams of horror that happened. Because everybody knew it happened. Intrusive thoughts. I wish he'd lived. I wish I could have done something different. But that's not the way it ended up. Suicide, addiction, divorce, and homelessness. My passion is to do this in every major college across the United States, which is not possible, I understand that. But I want to educate today's students because they're our decision makers of tomorrow. They have no idea what it means to put boots on the ground. Yeah, let's put boots on the ground. 5,000 Marines. Yeah, do you know about this? Between 18 and 22 a day take their life. You know about this? 27% of people, you know about this, the divorce rate? They don't know about this. So the college students today, they need to understand what it means to put boots on the ground. They need to understand the consequences of war. 22 a day. This says 22, I think it's between 18 and 22. The statistics went down for a year and a half, and then went back up to 20, I think. But regardless of what this number is, it's too high, regardless of what it is. So we'll just say it's 22. 22 people that were willing to die for you and for me. 22 people that put their life on the line so we can remain free, so our liberties and our freedoms stay intact, take their own life. And they do that, and you'll see how the depression and isolation spirals down to where they think they're alone, where they think there's no other way. Addiction. 27% of soldiers met the criteria for alcohol abuse in their first 3 to 4 months back. 1 in 4 soldiers abuse prescription drugs, and 31% of veterans that experience combat are more likely to binge drink. When I was in Vietnam, I had 2 choices to escape reality. If I had a bad day, and if we went out and we had a bad day, a lot of combat or something, I could come home, I could smoke weed, or I could drink. One of the 2. And what that did was, that got the war away. I escaped from reality by doing that. Well, you know, everybody knew I had to go right back to what I was doing the next day, but that was my escape. And that's what they do. They escape from the demons. Divorce. 42% of veterans divorced during or after their first tour, or their tour. First 90 days, common reason is the transition and responsibilities and things like that. Okay, let's just say you're in combat. Let's say you're 11B, that's an infantryman. You spend a year or maybe 9 months over there, and there's been life and death situations. You've been in combat. You know, you've fought for our freedom. Now you come home and somebody says, "Hey, you didn't take the damn trash out." Really? You know, 3 or 4 days ago or 6 months ago, I was, you know, saving a guy's life, and what? I didn't do the dishes or what? But I mean, I say that in jest, but I also want you to know that the partner that stayed home fought the war just as much as the soldier or sailor or men or women that went to war, because they became mom and dad. They became, you know, the soccer coach, and everything that 2 people were supposed to do was molded into one. Homelessness. We just fought this. Doyle knows about this. Bobby does too. And Randy. All the veterans here know about homelessness. 20,000 veterans of wars in Iraq and Afghanistan are homeless in the past 5 years. 50% is the rate in which veterans are more likely to become homeless when compared to other Americans. Homelessness, and they have so much pride, and they absolutely have so much pride, it's unbelievable. You know, with the program that we just did last winter, I went to one guy, Marcus Martin in East Chicago. He said, "Jim, you got us good there at the McDonald's down on Broadway. You just got, Indianapolis Boulevard, you just got to go down there." I went down there, there was 5 or 6 guys sitting around, and you can't just barge in and shake somebody's hand. So I sat next to him and I drank coffee. I had a brochure right next to me, you know, drank, and I saw him looking at it a couple times. I just got up and left and right there. Then at noon, at St. Joe's Kitchen in downtown Hammond, I'm in the soup line. I'm doing my best to find these veterans. The same people that were there at McDonald's that morning, they're getting that hot meal at noon. That mission that night, Baptist mission, on Holman Avenue by the library. I went there, the exact same people were there again. So they know how to survive, the homeless do. And they're so full of pride. Doyle and I were talking just before we even started. I said, how do we get more out? We have to change our approach to them, because they don't want to be labeled homeless. They don't want to be labeled struggling veterans, because there's too much pride in them. They feel they've done too much for this country for struggling the way they are. Additional symptoms. Poor memory. I mean, shoot, I could stand here and you could point at me on every one of these. Poor memory, avoiding activities. I isolate a lot. I feel detached. I sleep well. You know, I'm pretty easily irritable. Anger outburst, difficulty concentrating, and exaggerated startle response. You know, I might not be able to hear. I might not have good memory. I might get pissed off really quick, but I can hear that Huey 5 miles away as it's coming towards me. All right, battle fatigue, shell shock, PTSD, TBIs, and moral injuries. Battle fatigue and shell shock, they came to the front in World War I, World War II. That's what it was called. PTSD, same thing, different names. PTSD was born in Vietnam. I mean, it was before Vietnam, but it was brought to the forefront in Vietnam. So I asked you to remember one thing on the first sentence. PTSD is an anxiety disorder. Not something that's wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with you. It's something that happened to you. TBI, traumatic brain injuries. Tom could probably talk about that better than I could. This is the mean one, moral injuries. Moral injuries. Injuries to your soul. We're a God-fearing country. We're a God-fearing nation, regardless of how you believe. I'm going to give you a couple examples of this, but I want to tell you a story first really quickly. I was asked to speak at a Memorial Day service in, it was a tent revival in the woods. And I said, okay, that's pretty cool. I've never done that before, sure. So I called the pastor and I said, Pastor Pope, what is it you want? Is it you want me just to pat Memorial Day service? He goes, no, Jim. He goes, I want you to connect God and war. I'm like, connect God and war? And he said, yeah. And I said, okay. Hung up the phone and said, how in the hell am I going to do that? Like, all loving, all forgiving God, and I'm going to connect it with war? I don't know how to do that. So I went to Charles Lane. He's a black pastor in Gary. Good friend of mine. He's a plumber. I said, Charles, I said, and I explained to him what he wants me to do. I said, you know, what should I do? He said, ask for forgiveness, Jim. God will forgive you. For whatever you've done, just ask for forgiveness, and He'll forgive you. And I thought, well, that's not the answer I was looking for. And I went to Father Blakeslee with my church in Hobart. Asked him the same question. He said the same thing. And then one pastor said, we're guided by a higher power here in the United States, in this world, is what the Bible says. And I thought to myself, guided by a higher power, which could mean the government, I suppose. But you read down past that scripture, that part of the scripture, and it says you are guided by your conscience. You are guided by your conscience. You know right from wrong. Two examples of this. One from today's veterans. Talked to a young Marine that was somewhere near Fallujah. I can't remember the town that he talked about. And he came into a T and started receiving fire from the storefronts, from the rooftops. And he said, Jim, it was a fierce fight for about 45 minutes until the gunships got there. Once the gunships got there, they put out the fire, so to speak. Then he went in there, he went in to see what happened, or who was in there, or the casualties, and he found the women and children that he had killed. He saw the women and children that the cowards that he fought would hold up in front of him, hoping they would not shoot back, hoping they wouldn't return fire because they knew there'd be collateral damage. They knew there would be innocent people die. So the Marine says, okay, what am I doing? And when I told that story to a pastor, and Pastor Blakely goes, he didn't know. He's doing his job. He didn't know. I said, that's good. He didn't know that time. But what about the second time? What about the third time? What about when he draws down like this and he doesn't know if it's an enemy or if it's an innocent person? Does he makes that decision just like Jerry Clapp did when he was holding the compresses? These warriors make the same decision. Do I fire or do I wait to see? Moral injuries. They knew. He knew in his heart. He knew in his soul. Because we're God-fearing. And the cowards that we fight now take advantage of that. Long time ago, in 1970, in Vietnam, we were at a free fire zone. Free fire zone meaning you don't have to call back in to get permission to return fire. If you get fired upon, you can return fire. So I'm flying with Steve Warren, who was the pilot that saved my life when we crashed. But I was flying with Steve. We received fire from a little bill, about 6 or 7 little grass huts. He benched like this. I started working out with my 60, and I see that my tracers are setting the hooches on fire. The grass hooches on fire. That's cool. I lit them up, burned the village down, did as much carnage as I could to the people on the ground. People running and screaming. And I'm lighting it up. So much so I took a 35mm camera and I took a picture of the hooch that I started on fire. I still have it today. Still have the picture today. So that night I go back to Ankei and into our hooch. I got my M60 and I'm walking in. And I'm like, hey, this guy's name was Cheney. There's 3 or 4 old salty dogs in there. I said, hey Cheney, let me tell you what I did today. And I told him that story. And then he said, sit down, Chancellor, let me tell you what you really did. He said, this is what the VC do. He said, they run attacks of 6, 7, maybe a dozen. They go into a ville. They're the only ones that have weapons. Nobody else has weapons. They can do whatever they want. They can rape. They can take the food because nobody has any defense against them. So they wait for your helicopter to come by. They rip off a couple clips at your helicopter. You bank to return fire. They leave the village. Now, what did you do? Did you take it to the bad guys, Chancellor? No, I didn't. I took it to farmers and fathers and sons. Innocent people that only wanted peace. Intrusive thoughts we talked about. It stays with me forever. Put my 60 on my shoulder, and as I walked away, I started to cry because I knew I killed innocent people. Now, back to the church revival really quickly. With all of this in mind, and all of the pastors I talked to, I decided to leave them with a question, which I can't answer today. Maybe somebody here can answer it too. I gave my speech and I told a couple stories, and then I said, I leave with you with the same question that I can't answer. Not, will I be forgiven? Because I know God will forgive me. The question is, do I need to ask for forgiveness? Is what I did, was that wrong? Following orders? The kid with the gun, returning the fire to protect his people or to kill innocent people, was he wrong? The second time his conscience told him, this is not right. With the orders from above, said, this is what we do. This is our MO, this is how we fight. They couldn't answer it either. They circled and put a big circle of people around me and laid hands on me and said, please, Lord, please, take this from him. Let him find peace. But I can't answer that question today. I know. Lord, please forgive me for what I've done. That's all I need to do. But the question is, do I have to? Do I have to do that? I just want you to remember a couple of things that I really firmly believe that the vast majority of veterans are back into society. We're not all painted with the same brush. So the majority of people are back into society. But there are people that fight the demons every night. There are people that struggle to try to stay awake so they don't go to sleep. There are warriors that have fought and given their lives for us. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.